Whilst out at the Ironman World Championships, I've had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of the pros. I've also had the pleasure of speaking to many of the experts behind their incredibly fast performances. One in particular was body movement specialist Lawrence Van Lingen. Now, he has kindly agreed to share some of that knowledge. Be prepared to take things back to basics as he explains how our posture and the way we move can affect our running. All right, for you guys today, I'm going to be a guinea pig because I have a bodyworker movement specialist, Lawrence, here, who has worked with numerous pros, including Flora Duffy, Taylor Knibb, Jan Frodeno, and now you're going to work with me, Lawrence. I'm sorry about that, but I want to start with, and you've talked a lot about posture and you do a lot of work on posture, so I want you to start us off by looking at what is a good posture when it comes to going into running and any tips you have on how to lead that into good running technique.
Yeah, well, I think posture is really, really important for running, way more than people think. And it's also improvable and it needs to be managed. So we sit in a world where we're sitting a lot with our head forward, knees in front of hips. So we can have a lot of restrictions in our body from just daily life, I know. Let's all stand up straight. So for running, if you make a movement posture mistake in running, you'll have compensations. And a lot of people with running and trying to fix running are often working with compensations and not the core problem. So it's really, really important to work in your posture. Okay,
so how do I find out? You're going to tell me, but how would I, if I didn't have you here telling me, find out if I have a good posture that's going to help me run well?
Okay, so a running posture would be your head should balance on top of your shoulders. You can have a friend take a picture of you from the side and of the side running. Your ears should be on top of your shoulders and your shoulders should go through your hips. And from there you want a slight shift forward, but that's details. And you'll find most people, especially triathletes, because you're sitting on the bike, you're looking up, you can easily have a head forward posture when you're running.
But we also sit at desks when we're not sitting on our bikes, don't we?
Or commuting or driving, or how did you get to your run? Yeah. So we can practice that. A very good way of improving posture is be self-aware. Just recognize, oh, yes, I'm running with a head forward posture. Or whatever my posture is, it should be pretty stacked, and we want to try and get that sense of sort of upright stacking. And a good way to do it is often to lie on the ground. I'll just use this palm tree, but this palm tree will very quickly tell me what my posture's like. And so if you have a head forward posture, you'll realize okay, my posture's perhaps not appropriate. So with my athletes, we do a lot of work on the ground, practicing our running posture, because head is on top of shoulders, shoulders on top of hips, and you can mobilize and you can do reaches and you can do mobility work like that. And the gravity in the ground will basically line up your posture. And that's a real simple way. It doesn't have to be very technical.
Is that a good way to start then, do you think? Should we
yeah, but we don't want to lie on the grass. I'll cue you to good posture. Okay. But supportive, because I think the viewers are going to ask, well, how do I fix my posture?
Yeah, definitely.
And that can be complicated, but gravity will line you up, and so mat work, prone mat work, and that kind of stuff is a really good way to slowly improve your posture over time. But posture, if you work on your posture, it'll always come back and pay dividends.
So when I'm standing, what cues should I, if I don't have the tree in front of me, what cues do I need to be telling myself?
If you move,
this is when you guys can analyse me and Lawrence.
So here we have, that earlobe should be over the middle of your shoulder, and it's pretty close, it's pretty darn good. And that shoulder should be on top of hip, okay? So commonly you'll see people with tight hamstrings, the hips shift a little bit further forward, okay? Or you can sort of dump into your back.
Yeah, I am that if I'm not, I am a shift forward if I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah, well, it's also because you're ambitious. So humans should be shifted forward because it shows ambition or a desire to get somewhere. And when you run, you should be shifted forward, but obviously you can't have your hips coming in underneath you.
Okay, so
for you, just thinking about, again, you can maybe think of like a string pulling your head up, and you just want to think of a nice tall posture, ears on top of shoulders, shoulders on top of hips. And yours is good enough. You can work on it on the mat, you can work on it in general, but that posture's okay. We aim for progress, not perfection.
And how do I know if this then correlates to my running posture?
Okay, so we'll do a little trick called angel versus zombie. So if you, and it'll show you how important posture and your center of mass is in running. So if you put your arms out like a zombie and you walk around.
It's almost Halloween.
Yeah, it's almost Halloween. And you walk around, you'll notice that your
how am I supposed to be walking?
No, just walk and notice what happens. And you'll notice that probably your feet are getting thrown in front of you and your heels are hitting the ground first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like they are.
head forward or hands forward tends to throw your feet forward.
To counteract.
Yeah, and so a lot of people will have what they call an excessive heel strike. There's nothing wrong with heel striking, but if you're throwing your foot out and landing on a heel like that, let's call that excessive heel striking. And often it's a result of head or hand forward posture. Okay? If we put our hands behind us like an angel, and then you try and walk, you'll find your foot lands much more appropriately underneath your hip. And the art of running, like the real big secret sauce, is you want your foot to land as close to underneath your hip as possible.
Yeah.
That sorts a lot of things out. Like you'll see people working for cadence. If your foot lands underneath your hip, chances are you'll have an appropriate cadence.
Okay.
So this is an angel. So now you'll notice we're almost back to a shifted forward posture. And you'll see a lot of people have been cued to lean forward when they run, but if you watch modern running with the super shoes and the stack height, everyone's running pretty much dead upright.
Okay.
And it's much more of a forward shift. Okay, so it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how high or low your hands are when you run. There's very, very good runners that'll run with a very low arm carry. And like, let's say most of the Kenyans run with a very high arm carry.
Yeah.
Okay, but we want to think about the sort of distal 2/3 of your wrist should more or less be in the midline of your body.
Okay.
Okay, and we don't really want to see your hands go much further forward than that.
Even at their forward movement?
Yes.
Right.
So it's much more of a forward shift because you want that angel posture.
So your hands almost stay the same, but your body moves forwards of it. Okay.
And in that posture, we want to feel really athletic. So if you had to have a jump rope, you'd feel your whole running is an efficiency sport and you want to be efficient.
Yeah.
And so we want elastic energy return, and your spine can actually generate a lot of that. Like a super shoe is a pogo stick, it bounces out of the ground. You should bounce with it. And so we want the stacked elastic posture. Okay? So so there you should be feeling like I could jump rope, I feel shifted forward, and I feel pretty athletic.
Yeah, it doesn't take the weight slightly onto further forward on my feet.
It can. We're going to talk about feet a little bit in a moment, okay? Because we're going to nail that down too.
Right.
If you go back to zombie, you'll feel very disconnected and very unathletic.
I feel like I move my body.
And so a lot of people, they make the mistake when they are in this disconnected, they'll lean forward to try and create running tension. So if you lean forward from here, that's leaning forward, not forward shifting, right?
Okay.
Your toes go down, your foot locks.
Yeah, they're gripping.
Yeah, your Achilles get hard, and you can get so many injuries from excessive lean or gripping toes or toes that slam down.
Okay.
Your plantar fascia locks, your Achilles lock.
Yeah, I'm just straight away thinking of all the things of what those tendons are doing.
And this is separate from sprinting. Sprinting is a different set of cueing. But on your vast majority,
we're not sprinters.
The vast majority of your endurance or easy runs, you should be able to basically wiggle your toes. And so we're going to practice like a forward shift, pretty 50, maybe 60-40 in your foot. Can I wiggle my toes? And I want to feel athletic in that posture. Okay. And that's a great place to start your posture. You want to hold that lightly in your hand. If you try too hard, you'll run very stiff. So it's trending towards that, or it's a soft. And you don't separate motion from emotion, so it's a feeling. What do I feel like in this position? I feel open, I feel kind of trusting. I don't know, I feel good.
Yeah, you feel positive.
Yeah, and try
strong,
and almost say, like, what does this feel to me? And hold that rather than I must make this happen. Okay, tension is the enemy of efficiency. So you want this to feel light and relaxed and athletic. You could move, you could step to the one side, energetic.
Yeah.
Okay. Not too controlled or rigid.
I've got that feeling.
Yeah. And so you can just run from there.
You can just run into the shed.
Okay. So that's your posture.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like in broad strokes of the pen. You can work on that, and triathletes, I promise you can work on that for the rest of your life. The bike and modern day is constantly eroding that posture. So you really can always have that in the back of your mind.
Do you suggest even sort of starting before a run, almost in that posture, before you actually just set off on your everyday run? Or like, how do you incorporate those cues you've just given us?
Well, you can just practice, and you should practice at home and practice the sensations and the steps that we just went through, and start to have ownership of this sort of athletic, relaxed, energetic stance, because you need to run from that posture. A lot of what I do with athletes is we'll make changes, and we like to see that feeling good in their run rather than trying too hard to make it happen in your run. So working on your posture and your definitely your center of mass before you run is a very, very good idea, because you just set yourself up for success. Better runs upon better runs make better runs.
And I know, you've publicly worked with Taylor, and we've seen her running just time-wise improve a huge amount. But what aspects in particular, I don't know if you're able to talk about, like what, if we studied, what would we see? What would the lay?
Well, you'd see her posture is dramatically improved when she runs.
Okay.
You can go back, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a little bit started last year, but if you look at her now, her posture is just magnificent when she runs, and still a work in progress, and constant work in progress.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things here is, like, a lot of people's hips drop when they run.
We all know that classic photo that we hate.
Yes, the photo we don't want to see. Right? And one of the ways to you definitely want to work on hip strength, and also a sense of hip articulation. And it's not a quiet hip. If you try and keep your hip still, what tends to happen is you'll grab for stability, and you can actually make it worse. So that's something to think about. A lot of the athletes we're working with is don't grab for tension. You need to sort of learn to stand on one leg. But a really good cue for that as well is don't keep your head in the midline. So if you just try this, if you stand and you're going to keep your head very centered and then stand on one leg, okay? So what tends to happen is you tend to bow, and the tension pushes you through your hip.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And if we go back again, and if you stand, if you just let your head go over your standing leg and you stand, you'll find it.
I feel like I'm taller.
You're taller, and that's what we want. We want that sense of length. And running, you need not a lot of it. You'll see in a lot of African runners, you'll see it's marked. You just have to have eyes to see it, and you'll see, they're really running head over foot. But generally speaking, you want to be able to stand from stability point when you run to stability point when you run. And this you can practice walking. So you can just practice head over foot, or feel like you can exaggerate it when you're walking and feel a little bit like I call it the walk of the drunken sailor,
There'll be all sorts of walks after the Ironman. Well, we might not identify that one there, might we?
People watching.
Yeah. And that crosses over into running just by practicing with the walk. And then, are there any cues to be able to tell yourself to do that when you're running? Because obviously everything happens so much quicker when you're running, it's hard to then think about it.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful point. So a lot of what I do is we work on people's running in a room. So if you can do it in the room, you could do it walking. If you can do it walking, it's probably going to translate into your running.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of having people overthink or trying when you run. The forces are large, it's quick, there's a lot going on. And when you run, you actually want to notice the things. You should be so familiar with these concepts that it's almost inevitable it's going to happen when you run.
Okay. I'm definitely, next time I'm going out running, my brain is going to be like, well, normally running's my escape, but it's going to be. And you've touched on earlier the sort of slight change in posture due to the super shoe. And I'm really interested in, I haven't done much running in a super shoe, but should we be changing our gait, or how do we make the most of these amazing shoes that are now on the market?
Yes, the super shoes are amazing. So one is with super, they are a clear performance advantage.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think, which is not sort of recognized, is with the higher stack heights, they often clean up people's mechanics.
Okay.
So that would be like, let's say, if you roll in your ankles, if you suddenly wore a pair of stilettos, you would put your ankle down straight. So I have seen significant changes in people's mechanics and alignment wearing in higher stack heights.
Right. I thought it might exacerbate problems.
It can. So on that level, if you're compressing or rolling it on a super shoe, that's worse.
Yeah.
Because you're falling in from a higher angle. So make sure that the super shoes are actually improving your mechanics, not making them worse, right? But generally speaking, they can be a real force for good in terms of stack height and ankle alignment, because you're getting really appropriate feedback. And like you say, you're higher off the ground, you're almost made to put your feet down better.
Is it chicken or egg that we're running faster? Is the shoe making us change our technique, or is our technique naturally changing because we're in that shoe?
Yeah, I love the super shoes. I think, look, I'm really big into strengthening your feet. As you can see, I'm in sandals. I wear minimalist shoes to strengthen my feet. But I think they've really, really helped running. I think it's taken running, we're starting to understand running's an endurance sport and energy return sport. People can feel the energy return, so the biofeedback's there, and it's really helping people find more rhythm and more energy return. They are basically pogo sticks. And I think we need to transition from a discussion of, like, let's say, a high cadence or quick turnover, or keeping your feet off the ground. Suddenly, in a super shoe, you're actually trying to do a really good job of pushing them into the ground and then going with the energy return out of the ground, which is a big reframe. And I don't think sort of modern running is kind of, I don't think the language, I don't think the story has caught up with what it's doing. And then also, like I was saying earlier on, people's alignment improved and also their postures improved. Yeah. And we sort of moved out of a forward leaning and into upright and sort of pressing into the ground and then bouncing out of them.
So do you think there's certain styles of runners that suit them better?
Yes.
And those are the runners who are already running like in the more upright style?
Interestingly enough, a lot of runners that aren't that complicated and just warm up, do some strides and run, feel the energy return of the super shoes and seem to be dialed into it. Yeah. And there's a lot of runners that are working very, very hard on their technique and that are overriding the bounce.
Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, I don't want to go into too much more detail, but you've touched on Cadence there, and you talked to me a little bit more about that before. And on the channel, we've talked that it's finding what's right for you. But what are your tips on Cadence?
Okay, so for Cadence, if you work on Cadence, here's my very important tip: is don't increase your cadence by picking your feet up off the ground quicker. Okay, and that means you need to change the way you count. So most people, when they increase cadence, they pick their feet up off the ground.
Okay.
And some people say light, quick turnover or decrease ground contact time. It's all about up.
Yeah.
Super shoes about down.
Right.
So what you want to do is when you run, you want to count and you're going to go 1 and you press your foot into the ground. And change the timing. You might find when you run, you're going 1, 2, 3 and you're picking your foot up every time you count.
Yeah.
Change that to 1, 2 and head over foot.
Right.
And that's a very subtle but marked change.
See, in my mind, that's like, I want to think running light, upright, so I want to count on an up. I don't want to count on a down.
No, you want to count on the down, okay? And then once you've mastered counting on the down, and make sure you're counting on the down, it might be a little harder than you think.
Yeah.
And again, if it's really challenging, always make it simpler. So just go for a walk and count on the down until it's natural, and then it'll happen in the run. Don't try. With movement problems, you never ask someone to solve a problem that it's too challenging for them. Always try and make it simpler. Okay. And then the second thing is once you've got that dialed, you can go, we call it the 1 and drill. And so what you do is you go 1, and only count on the one leg. Most people will just count on the right leg.
Okay.
But don't try and go 1, just on the one leg. So you're going to go 1 and.
Okay.
And the 1 and, on the and you do something. And that will help you time your running to a super shoe. Because you're going to go 1 and I bounce out of my super shoe, or 1 and I roll off my toes.
Okay.
And that helps sort of increase your stride length and gets you from picking up and not possibly using a super shoe.
I love those points.
And then the very, very important thing with the super shoe is you must practice in them. Tissues adapt slowly, and it takes a long time to adapt to super, and especially if you've been really working on cadence and you want to start running in super shoes and using them, you need to start slowly, and it takes 2-3 months to adapt to super shoes.
That's an interesting one and a really difficult one.
An expensive one.
Yeah, I mean, I have one pair of super shoes. I've worn them once, and I'm going to save them to my next race in my mind. And I never want to feel as good in training because I want to save that feeling. But maybe I need to change that mindset.
No, don't. Yeah, last year we had an athlete that wasn't sure and ran in a super shoe the Wednesday before Kona, gave herself plantar fasciitis and pulled out of the race.
Oh.
You do not want to be that person. Yeah, you've got to practice, and the tissue adaptation takes time.
Okay, well, thank you, Lawrence. I mean, I want to go out running now. My brain is like, quick, before I forget all this, but then I also know that I need to keep it simple. So I'm hoping that you guys have taken loads from this and have got small snippets to go and work on. And do check out Lawrence's work as well if you want to sort of see more detail of what he goes into, because I can tell you there is a lot of detail inside this oracle. Well, Lawrence, thank you so much for your time on that. And keep an eye out for all those athletes racing.
Thank you, and good luck, everyone, and run well.